Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Prime Minister Narendra Modi attends G7 Outreach Summit in Canada. Leaders issue statements on AI for prosperity, transnational repression, and countering migrant smuggling. Prime Minister Modi meets other world leaders on the sidelines of the G7 summit, discusses strengthening of bilateral ties. G7 leaders call for de-escalation but stop short of seeking a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. And Israel and Iran continue attacks on each other. US President Donald Trump convenes a meeting of his National Security Council. Prime Minister Narendra Modi participated in the G7 Outreach Summit in Canada's Kananaskis. PM Modi held exchanges with G7 leaders on key global challenges and shared aspirations for a better planet. The other leaders from Australia, Brazil, Mexico, South Africa, South Korea, Ukraine, and heads of foreign organizations such as the United Nations and the World Bank convened for a collective commitment to addressing global challenges and promoting common values. And Prime Minister Modi met Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Kananaskis. PM Modi complimented Carney and the Canadian government for successfully hosting the G7 summit. The two leaders held discussions on a wide range of issues. In a joint remark, PM Modi said that India has kept the foundation in G20 for global good and it should be taken forward at G7 too. PM Modi said India and Canada are connected by a strong belief in democracy, freedom and rule of law. And both leaders look forward to working closely to add momentum to the India-Canada friendship in areas such as trade, energy, space, clean energy, critical minerals, fertilizers and more, offering immense potential in this regard.
पिछले दिनों G20 समिट की अध्यक्षता के रूप में भारत ने विश्व के लिए अनेक उपकारक ऐसे इनिशिएटिव लिए हैं। आज G7 के अंदर G20 में भारत ने जो मजबूत नींव रखी है उसको एक प्रकार से नए स्वरूप में G7 में उसके एग्जीक्यूशन की दिशा में ले जाने में एक बहुत बड़ा अवसर है और भारत इस अवसर का उपयोग ग्लोबल गुड के लिए करने के लिए हमेशा इच्छुक रहा है, आगे भी इच्छुक रहेगा।
PM Modi said that India and Canada relations are very important in many ways. Many Canadian companies have investments in India and similarly the people of India also have a huge investment on Canadian soil.
लोकतांत्रिक मूल्यों को समर्पित कनाडा और भारत मिलकर के लोकतंत्र को मजबूत करना होगा, मानवता को मजबूत करना होगा, हमारे रिसोर्सेज का ऑप्टिमम यूटिलाइजेशन कर करके मानव जात के कल्याण के काम में कैसे ला सकते हैं उस दिशा में हम प्रयास करते रहेंगे। और मुझे विश्वास है कि प्रधानमंत्री जी के चुनाव के बाद मुझे पहली बार मिलने का मौका मिला है, तो इस चुनाव के भव्य विजय के लिए भी मैं उनको बधाई देता हूं और आने वाले कालखंड में उनके साथ भारत और कनाडा मिलकर के अनेक क्षेत्रों में प्रगति करेंगे।
Now, Prime Minister Modi met the President of the EU Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, on the margins of the G7 summit. Meanwhile, Canada and India have agreed to restore high commissioners in both countries. The announcement came after the two leaders met on the sidelines of the G7 summit. India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said that these steps will boost India-Canada ties. He added that other areas of discussion between the two leaders included AI, critical minerals and trade.
Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi and Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada have just a short while ago concluded a very positive and constructive meeting on the sidelines of the G7 summit here in Kananaskis in Canada. The meeting discussed the importance of the India-Canada relationship, which is based on shared values, democracy and the rule of law, people-to-people contact, and many other commonalities. The Prime Ministers agreed to take calibrated steps to restore stability to this very important relationship. And the first of these steps that was agreed on was to restore High Commissioners to each other's capitals at an early date. Other diplomatic steps will follow in due course. The two Prime Ministers also agreed to resume senior and working level mechanisms and discussions in a host of areas related to trade, to people contact and connectivity, all of them intended to bring greater momentum to the relationship. The two leaders also discussed potential collaboration in a host of issues related to clean energy, clean technology, digital infrastructure, artificial intelligence, food security, critical minerals and supply chains. In view of the trade negotiations between the two countries that are currently paused, the two leaders also decided to instruct their officials to take it up at an early date. The two leaders agreed to stay in touch and meet once again at the earliest possible opportunity.
Prime Minister Modi met Mexico's President Dr. Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo on the sidelines of the 51st G7 summit at Kananaskis in Canada. In their first ever meeting, Prime Minister Modi congratulated President Sheinbaum on a historic electoral victory. He also thanked Mexico for its support in India's fight against terrorism. The two leaders emphasized deepening cooperation across key sectors including trade, investment, startups, science and technology, and the automotive industry. They discussed leveraging near-shoring opportunities and enhancing collaboration in pharmaceuticals, agriculture, and holistic health. For her part, President Sheinbaum expressed admiration for India's advancements in technology and digital infrastructure, and she conveyed her interest in joint initiatives in semiconductor, AI, quantum technology, and critical minerals. The two leaders welcomed stronger cultural exchanges, tourism, and academic cooperation as well. PM Modi recalled his 2016 visit to Mexico and invited President Sheinbaum to visit India. They concluded with a shared commitment to amplify the voice of the Global South and work together on global and regional challenges. Commemorating steadfast 25 years of their strategic partnership, Prime Minister Modi met Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Both leaders discussed ways to strengthen bilateral cooperation in key areas such as trade and investment, defense and security, green and sustainable development partnership, green energy, technology, innovation, education and mobility. They also exchanged views on regional and international developments. PM Modi thanked Chancellor Merz for Germany's strong solidarity and support to India in its fight against terrorism. PM Modi met his Australian counterpart Anthony Albanese on the sidelines of the G7 summit. PM Modi also met South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa at the G7 summit. And Prime Minister Modi had a meeting with President of South Africa and Brazil as well. Leaders had an outstanding conversation with the two dear friends. They shared the unwavering commitment to speaking about issues that matter to the global South. The leaders are equally determined to do whatever it takes to build a better tomorrow for the coming generations. Prime Minister Modi also had a meeting with South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung. The two leaders reaffirmed their commitment to deepening the India-South Korea Special Strategic Partnership by exploring new avenues for cooperation through partnerships in areas such as trade and economy, critical and emerging technologies, green hydrogen, shipbuilding, culture and people-to-people ties, among others. They also discussed regional and global issues. Prime Minister Modi also met his Italian counterpart Giorgia Meloni on the sidelines of the summit. The two leaders reaffirmed the deep-rooted friendship between India and Italy. PM Meloni praised the strong ties and PM Modi expressed confidence that this partnership will keep growing for the benefit of both countries. And Prime Minister Modi also met his Japanese counterpart Ishiba Shigeru during the G7 summit in Canada. India and Japan remain committed to further deepening bilateral ties across various sectors. On the sidelines of the summit, PM Modi also met with his British counterpart Keir Starmer. And PM Modi also had a productive conversation with the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa. And Prime Minister Modi also had a meeting with France's President Emmanuel Macron. Both leaders discussed ways to strengthen bilateral cooperation in key areas in multiple sectors. They also exchanged views on regional and international developments. France will host the next G7 summit at the Alpine Spa Resort town of Evian-les-Bains in 2026, French President Macron said on Tuesday. Bordering Switzerland on the shores of Lake Geneva, Evian already hosted the G7 in 2003. It was the first time Russia had been invited to join, although it was kicked out of the group in 2014 after it annexed Crimea from Ukraine. The leaders of Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United States and the European Union will meet in the summer of 2026. Right, time for a very short break. Keep watching DD India. Don't go anywhere.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Can the US launch a bombing campaign against Iran? The Philippines vessel suffered structural damage. The saga of child sexual abuse is the United States China's debt trap strategy. Truth is stranger than fiction. But sometimes hard to uncover. Trust us to tell the truth, unadulterated and pure, of every story that matters to you.
Exactly what to save your.
You read between the lines, cut the clutter, and connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the dots at these times with me, only on
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. The group of 7 nations have expressed support for Israel and labeled its rival Iran as a source of instability in West Asia. In a statement issued late on Monday, the leaders called for peace and stability in the region. The joint statement, backed by Trump and released by Canada, urged that the resolution of the Iranian crisis leads to a broader de-escalation of hostilities in West Asia, including a ceasefire in Gaza. The statement also said that Israel has a right to defend itself and stressed the importance of the protection of civilians as the growing attacks kill civilians on both sides. Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan and the United States also said their conviction is that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. Israel's military has said it has struck Iran deep, hitting its nuclear, ballistic and command capabilities. It launched at least 2 waves of strikes targeting missile and drone sites in western Iran. Multiple series of loud explosions were heard across Tehran over the course of the day, while Iranian media reported blasts in Isfahan, which hosts nuclear facilities. Israel said it intercepted most of a barrage of missiles fired from Iran after air raid sirens sounded in Tel Aviv and northern parts of the country. The Israeli military issued 7 missile alerts for various parts of the country since midnight. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said Israel's campaign seeks to eliminate Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs, as well as its axis of terrorism, a reference to Iranian-backed militant groups in West Asia. He's also not ruled out killing the Iranian supreme leader. Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar said that regime change is not an objective of this war. It can be a result, but it is not an objective. Meanwhile, Iran denies seeking nuclear weapons and has pointed to its right to nuclear technology for peaceful purposes, including enrichment, as a party to the International Non-Proliferation Treaty.
We are now on day 5 of Operation Rising Lion. We've struck deep, hitting Iran's nuclear, ballistic and command capabilities. The Iranian regime has spent years getting closer to a nuclear weapon. They have spent billions building a ballistic missile program. Our mission is clear: to remove the threat at its source. We are now on day 5 of Operation Rising Lion. We've struck deep, hitting Iran's nuclear, ballistic and command capabilities. The Iranian regime has spent years getting closer to a nuclear weapon. They have spent billions building a ballistic missile program. Our mission is clear: to remove the threat at its source. We are now on day 5 of Operation Rising Lion.
Iran's Armed Forces Chief of Staff Abdul Rahim Mousavi has issued a stark warning to Israeli civilians. In a televised statement, Mousavi urged residents of Tel Aviv and Haifa to evacuate immediately, citing imminent punitive operations against Israel. Meanwhile, Iran's Revolutionary Guards say that they have launched retaliatory strikes on Israeli air bases, which they claim have been used to launch attacks on Iranian territory. So tensions clearly remain dangerously high. Amid escalating tensions between Iran and Israel, US President Donald Trump called for Iran's unconditional surrender and warned that US patience was wearing thin. Trump claimed that the US knows the exact location of Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, calling him an easy target, but said that he won't be taken out, at least for now. Trump also asserted that the US controls the skies over Iran. He praised the effectiveness of US-made weaponry, though he stopped short of directly naming Israel. Meanwhile, Trump met his National Security Council on Tuesday to discuss the Iran-Israel war as the U.S. leader considered whether to join Israel's air campaign against Tehran. As per a White House official, the meeting in the White House Situation Room lasted 1 hour and 20 minutes. Trump is keeping all options on the table while insisting that Washington, D.C. had no hand in the campaign so far. The most likely option under consideration by Trump would be the use of giant U.S. bunker buster bombs against Iran's deeply buried Fordo nuclear facility that Israel's bombs cannot reach. Some other media reports are claiming that said Trump was also considering allowing U.S. tanker aircraft to refuel Israeli combat jets so that they could carry out long-range missions. On the sidelines of the G7 summit, France's President Emmanuel Macron took a firm stand against any military intervention in Iran. Speaking to media, Macron said he was opposed to actions that could lead to regime change and further chaos in the region.
Mais je pense que la plus grande des erreurs aujourd'hui, c'est de chercher par la voie militaire à faire un changement de régime en Iran. Parce que ce sera là le chaos. Et donc la responsabilité qui est la nôtre, c'est de reprendre au plus vite des discussions pour permettre justement de redonner un cadre à la question nucléaire et à la question balistique. C'est constamment ce que la France fait depuis 10 ans.
The Indian Embassy in Tel Aviv has issued an advisory for nationals in Israel to stay vigilant and follow safety protocols. In the advisory, it is said that Indians intending to leave should use land crossings and register with the embassy for assistance. The Embassy of India has also activated its helpline numbers 24/7 to provide assistance to Indian nationals. Those needing help or information can call on the following numbers: +972 54 752 0711 or +972 54 327 8392. There's also an email address cons1.telaviv@mea.gov.in. In addition, Indian nationals who remain in Israel and have not yet registered with the embassy have been strongly urged to do so immediately via the registration portal. The address is ind.embassy.israel.gov.in/Indian_national_reg. In other news, Ukraine on Tuesday slammed the lack of an adequate reaction from the world to Russia's strikes on its soil after an attack on Kyiv killed at least 16 people. The European Commission has proposed the EU ban all Russian gas and liquefied natural gas imports by the end of 2027, with a ban on short-term contracts starting next year. The UK too announced further sanctions against Russia. Here's a report.
As the Russia-Ukraine conflict drags on, the Kremlin on Tuesday said that there was no understanding of when the next direct negotiations with Kyiv would take place, adding Russia had fulfilled all its obligations agreed to in previous talks held in Istanbul on June 2. The Kremlin also made it clear that Russia would assess the possible time frame for continuing negotiations in the coming days. Amid all this, Russia fired scores of missiles and drones at Kyiv on Tuesday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky alleged that at least 16 people were killed in what he thought was one of the most horrific attacks on the capital. According to Zelensky, Russia sent more than 440 drones and 32 missiles at Ukraine. The strike was one of the deadliest on Kyiv since Russia launched its full-scale attack in February 2022. Ukraine also slammed the lack of adequate response and condemnation from the world to Russia's deadly strikes on its soil. Meanwhile, as search operations continued at a missile strike site in Kyiv, representatives of 62 foreign diplomatic missions visited the spot. Also, Britain on Tuesday announced further sanctions against Russia. The latest sanctions targeted 4 individuals, 6 entities, and 20 ships, including oil tankers, marine-related companies, and suppliers of goods to Russia, particularly electronics. As negotiations between Kyiv and Moscow have failed, Secretary of Russia's Security Council and a former defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, held talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un for the second time in 2 weeks on Tuesday on special instructions from President Vladimir Putin. Shoigu previously visited Pyongyang and met Kim on March 21 and June 4 as Moscow and Pyongyang came close in the face of a situation which both nations termed as hostile West. Bureau Report, DD India.
And that's all for this edition of DD India Live. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download it. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran from all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.